In late August, I was contacted by Lithuania's Minister of Social Security and Labor with an offer to have an interview and for me to ask any questions I may have about his job and his ministry's role in Lithuania. We spent close to an hour talking about all sorts of topics, and so I had some trouble figuring out how to best present all of this as a singular video topic. I ultimately settled on the video title, Lithuania's Government Needs Improvement. Here's the plan. Because in my humble foreigner opinion, I think Lithuania is wonderful and a great place to live and raise a family. And, well, I think we can all agree that there are worse governments around the world to have to live with. But I do think there are also many Lithuanians in the country, and even outside of it, who think that there's still room for improvement. I mean, there's always room for improvement, isn't there? And so with this in mind, I discussed all sorts of things with Vytautas Šilinskas, Lithuania's current Minister of Social Security and Labor. He's got some ideas, both big and small, for how he wants to improve the country. And so without further delay, let's just jump into the content of the interview. And the first thing I had to discuss was something he made the news for prior to taking his current position. Part of the headline quoted him saying, "Žmonės turi jausti, kad mokėti mokesčius apsimoka." People have to feel that paying taxes is worthwhile. In preparation for our interview, I put out a poll on Instagram asking taxpayers of Lithuania if they felt like the amount they paid in taxes was fair, especially when considering things like healthcare, social services, defense, etc. I hope there wasn't too much misinterpretation of the question and the optional answers, but it was almost 50-50 at one point in terms of people who felt like paying taxes was worthwhile compared to those who didn't. But still, I'm quite impressed that so many people felt like paying their taxes was worth it. But discussing this topic and the results of my unofficial poll, here's what Mr. Šilinskas had to say.
I would expect that the numbers would be lower for those who are positive. At least from the people that I communicate. But maybe it's your bubble, you know? It's Instagram bubble and more educated, better, well-off people, so those are generally more positive. It's also generational differences that how people feel about the government.
Okay, but then actually addressing people's attitude towards taxes, Minister Šilinskas had this to say.
Democracy is really awesome. Most of the people, including me, previously did not understand this. So, for example, we understand that, okay, democracy provides you free speech, and we understand this as ability to criticize government. But it's not only that, it's also kind of an obligation to inform the people, the rest of the society on the important things. Some people in Lithuania still do not feel owners of their country. They are kind of renting the government. They are renters of the country. That's the most important thing to change from my perspective. Citizens and the people would feel the ownership of their country. In this case, they would understand that, okay, the money that the government is paying to the people, it's their money, and would also challenge whether we need to pay those or that benefits. And then the efficiency of the public spending increases, and it's quite easy through the mass economy, scale economy, to put, value of 1.2 euro when the taxes are paid of 1 euro. Generally, autocracy or dictatorships siphons the resources from the people to the top. To the Putin and his friends around him, they would collect quite some of the money of the amount of the wealth that is created in the country to themselves.
He began redistributing wealth and control over state resources amongst his friends, many of them ex-KGB.
So it's normally that there, 1 euro of taxes is transferred back to the people 0.08 or something like that. Tax value is reduced. But if we have efficient government, we can increase this. For example, we have this employment service, right? And 80% when they get unemployed, 80% of people register with the employment service. But I've checked how many of them then find the job or accept the job that was proposed by the employment service. And the number is around 13%. So people do not get what they would expect from the employment service. And majority of people who register with them do not get the service they would expect, and they feel that their tax money were wasted. And only those who were helped feel that, okay, it was worth paying taxes. So we've discussed this. We have a goal in 2 years to double this number, and it's reachable because we'll increase not the number of the employees, but we have this IT systems in progress, because currently one specialist has 600 clients, unemployed people or so it's hard to help individually. But through the help of the IT systems and artificial intelligence, we'll be able to propose better jobs to more people and faster. I imagine you kind of Tinder for the employers and employees. It won't look as good because it will be made by the government and copying other government services, so on. But the idea was that. So it's possible to create more value, and we have to do that.
Now, I love the concept of making government more efficient. I mean, I like making everything more efficient. I'll save my critiques and criticisms for later in this video, but reacting to what the minister is saying, you can tell that he's bringing some of his business/MBA education to the table. And I mean, maybe that's one benefit to appointing ministers who aren't necessarily politicians. Because having grown up in Canada, I'm used to government ministers almost always being elected politicians from the ruling party. But apparently it's not always like this in Lithuania. But anyways, getting back to what the minister said, I think it's hard for anyone to argue against a government working to be more efficient. If they can do more with the same tax money, well, who's going to be opposed to that? The minister then goes on to talk about how people working in government management and public service need to change their mindsets in order to serve Lithuanians better.
Only 18% of people in Lithuania, employees, feel that in their teams, mistakes are kind of seen as opportunities of improvement, and there's acceptable risk in their work. So others feel that it's not like that, and they are punished for the mistakes. And the numbers are even lower when you come to and ask people who are over 40 or who work at the public institutions. That's the main issue and the main problem that I see with the public institutions, that people do a lot of work that is made to avoid punishment rather to help people. So if I change that, which I'm trying to do, that we won't punish for the mistakes, we'll learn from that, and we'll encourage the people who do more, because there were no encouragement for doing more job, there was only punishment for mistakes, then the people will do more for the citizens. It's easy to say, it's easy idea, it's hard to implement, because when you say to the people that we won't punish you, they don't believe at first, because it's just words. They have to make first, second, third mistake and see that things have changed and they are not being punished for the mistakes, and we can learn. It's kind of the general idea.
From the sounds of it, the minister wants to make the public sector run more like a modern business. And with this, we use the common metaphor of the carrot and the stick. Šilinskas wants public service to be less about punishment, which is the stick, and more about rewards and incentives for high performance, carrots. But there is yet one more factor that he acknowledges that is very important to well-functioning government services: having workers that actually care about their job. Here's what he had to say about that.
The scientific evidence shows that people who are looking for meaning at work, they more often choose the public sector as employer, because you want to help people. It's not about the salary, it's about helping the people. And that's what motivates people. So the meaning at work, I would say, I don't have the exact date, but I would say around 90s probably. More and more companies started relying, on the mission, on their vision, and so on, rather on KPIs and profit. It's still in progress, but that's what you could notice in the public. And again, for some countries, for Scandinavians, those ideas are really important. For the Eastern Europe, it's really important.
So at this point, I have to wonder what you're thinking about the minister's outlook and approach to government thus far. I agree with him in that all of this is easier said than done, but yeah, if you can make government workers care about their job and be more motivated, such as through rewards for high performance, well, I guess those internal and external drivers, in theory, should lead to better public services. But moving on to another topic, Mr. Šilinskas is the Minister of Social Security. And so pensions are something his ministry is responsible for. I was quite curious about Lithuania's pension situation. Government payouts seem to be crazy low. If we add on top of this a negative birth rate and the risk of a shrinking population in the future, without migration of course, then one has to wonder how Lithuania will be able to fund the retirements of its citizens. Well, here's what the minister had to say about that.
Lithuania is spending less on pensions than other countries based on the GDP. So the taxes for pensions are lower and pensions are lower, one thing. Other thing that in other countries, especially Western countries, they had this, second, third pillar, became shareholders, invested in funds and so on. So they have more capital to spend at their pension age, and the pensioners are richer in other countries. So it could be one of the reasons why, people under 30 are one of the happiest in the world, the happiest, according to one of the surveys, because we aren't paying as much to our pensioners as other countries are. So one thing, the population is getting older as everywhere in half of the countries probably in the world. There's a lot of potential to still increase the pensions. At the start of the position of vice minister at 2020, I've checked what are the salaries, where we are. Hourly labor costs, we are at around 10 euros per hour. Average in European Union was around 30 euros. So 3 times lower number in Lithuania. During these 3 years, we managed to grow quite a lot, up to around 14, 15 euros, and the average of European Union is still the same, because most countries even haven't reached the pre-COVID salaries based on real wages. There's a lot of potential to increase the productivity, to earn more, and to have higher pensions, because it's just, part of the revenue. Part of the revenue goes to the pensions. So the more people earn, the more pensions are increased. And if we, let's say, just reach the average with the same population, the pensions would still grow double, 3 times double. If the population is decreasing, the increase would not be as big, but still substantial. So the productivity is the answer into increasing the pensions. The most important thing is to avoid the middle income trap. It's when the country reaches, let's say, average middle income level, its business and politicians are afraid or do not want to jump higher, to invest more, because it takes risks. You have to invest in R&D, which would not sometimes pay off. You must invest in new products, which might not pay off. It's easy to compete on cheaper labor costs. It's hard to compete on higher quality. And that's the transition that we have to do. We have to forget competing on cheaper labor costs and transfer our economy to the competition on higher quality.
So, okay, he has a plan, but this assumes that people will actually pay their taxes and declare that taxable income. And then so how is the government going to deal with people who don't declare their taxable income?
I've tried to find out why some people are working illegally and not paying taxes at all. So, I knew some people who were doing because they had debt, they were indebted. Debt collectors would take 30% of your salary. So if you earn minimum wage, you would be left only with around 15 euros per day. So working illegally, you could probably earn that in an hour, right? Or even more in the construction site. It made sense for people to work illegally, one thing. And the data showed that, we have 200,000 people who are in debt, around 62% or something like that, do not work, or at least do not work legally. We have an issue, how we solve that. The first ideas what I've got from the people around me in the public sector, that we should somehow punish them harder to work, to pay, and so on. And my idea was totally different, that we should help the people. And I've managed to convince, but this took me probably 2 years of convincing the politicians, specialists, and so on, that we should help people and to make it, positive incentives to work. So from the 1st of July, the deduction is not 30%, but 10% from the minimum wage. One thing. And from the 1st of December, those who haven't worked for half a year and will start working will be entitled to so-called debt holidays. Nothing will be deducted from their salary. So not through the harder punishment, but through the help to the people and through incentives, nudges, how they are called. Again, carrots, not the sticks, And we'll see. And in this case, my calculation was, okay, 200,000 people, let's say 1% starts working for the minimum wage. That would be 6.5 million in tax revenue and 2 million euros in additional money to the creditors. Okay, it's the same word. So the creditors would earn also the 2 million euros every year that they would not get if people would continue working illegally. So the benefits are clear. We'll see how it will go. But again, it was not about the loss. It's hard to convince people that, it's not the sticks, it's carrots that works better.
And so look, at this point, I should make clear that my knowledge on government finances, economics, and social systems is pretty limited, especially compared to the minister's experience and knowledge. And so I don't know how much I can actually critique and pick apart everything that the minister has already talked about. Now, what I can say is that he makes some pretty convincing arguments. I agree that positive incentives are better than negative ones, like, punishments. And I agree that internal motivation is really quite an important factor for most people. But what I can't say is if all of these principles will be easily implemented at the Ministry of Social Security and Labor. Like the minister said, people can be really stuck in their ways, and changing those ways of thinking and working takes time. And so maybe after all of this, you might be wondering why. Why was Minister Šilinskas offering to do a recorded interview with this obscure YouTube channel and then discuss taxes and government? Well, here's what he had to say about that.
My personal goal currently is to communicate as much as possible the value that the government creates, at least the ministry. Because for the first month, I was really thinking hard how much more value I could create in my position, having experience as a lawyer, as a manager. I have an MBA there, and previously I was attorney at law. And as a good negotiator, that's my strength. And I thought where I could create value with my strengths. And then I understood that I've asked the wrong question. It's not where I could create most value, but where the most value is needed. Where's the bottleneck, so-called? And the bottleneck is with communication, because we do much more than we communicate and show that we have done. So I'm trying to improve this part through the personal communication and through the communication of the ministry. One thing, I feel that people do not understand why it's important, because I have had this pushback when I started to communicate regarding the so-called second pillar of pensions. And I was advised that, no, you should first decide and then inform what was the decision. I pushed back that, no, we are democracy. I have to provide what I see, what's good and what's bad about that, what I see the options to change that, and get the feedback, and only then to decide. So again, democracy and autocracy. People are still used that the government should only decide and inform people rather to consult with the people and then decide. And other thing, the lesson I've learned is that politicians are often afraid to communicate. The journalists will take any sentence from any your post and put to the headline whatever they like. So it's not about informing. The headlines aren't meant to inform people. It's to sensationalize, and often they would misrepresent what was actually said. And that's why I see that most politicians are afraid to communicate, because that's the safest way not to get punished. Politicians would say we need to increase taxes to increase spending on public housing or something like that, or pensions. We need to increase taxes to increase pensions, which is true, okay? But the headline would be, we need to increase taxes. And then the people are afraid to say anything because they could be, misrepresented.
And so it sounds like the minister is really trying hard to get ahead of the story and educate the public before the media has a chance to put their spin on things with twisted headlines based on quotes taken out of context. But as you can see, the minister and I covered a lot of ground in this 55-minute meeting. And I didn't even include everything, since I think some other stuff is better suited for their own videos. Now, I definitely don't want to accept everything the minister has told me at face value and have this video be some kind of super positive and optimistic pro-government propaganda piece. But again, I would say he did make a lot of good points that I don't think I can really refute. And so that's where you come in, because I would love to know what you think about the minister's approach and his opinions on government, taxes, and social services. Are there any big problems you can see with his approach? Do you think there's anything missing? Whatever you're thinking, please do leave a comment down below. I'm definitely interested in hearing what you have to say, and there's a good chance the minister will be checking these comments as well. Anyways, I'll stop here and give a huge thank you to Minister Vytautas Šilinskas for his time. And then thank you for your time in watching this video. I'll see you next time. If you enjoy this channel and want to support me in making more videos, please consider becoming a Patreon patron. There's a link down in the description for you to check out. Thanks so much for watching.
O gal išėjote iš darbo ir nežinote, kaip gauti nedarbo išmoką? Jei nerimaujate, kiek pensijos sukaupsite, taip pat galite klausti.